Hey guys, I'm going to explain how to issue out an operational order for a mission. So you generally refer to this as an op order. By the way, I'm not guaranteeing that I'm going to cover everything down to the T, but I'm going to do my best. Alright, so just to give you some background. So the 5-paragraph order is something common to multiple nations part of NATO. So France, Germany, Italy, Spain, and the United Kingdom, just to name a few. Its main purpose is to improve interoperability between the militaries of these member nations. Alright, so basically they all agree to use the 5-paragraph order format SMEAC. Alright, so now this information isn't confidential, it's out there for everyone to see. Okay, so what does the 5-paragraph order SMEAC stand for? It stands for Situation, Mission, Execution, Administration and Logistics, and Command and Signal. Now the Marine Corps adds an O to SMEAC, making it OSMEAC. So O stands for Orientation, and it's the first element of the Marine Corps op order. So OSMEAC stands for Orientation, Situation, Mission, Execution, Administration and Logistics, Command and Signal. Alright, so now I'm going to go into each one of those. So orientation. So in orientation, you are orientating your subordinates. You're telling them where you are and where you're going. All right, so your present grid location is the first thing you say, so that is the 8-digit grid coordinate. Then you give the direction of attack. So for example, we will head northeast at 60 degrees for 100 meters. So this is the azimuth and distance. Then you give the objective grid location, which is an 8-digit grid coordinate. Then you give terrain and obstacles. So you want to talk about how the terrain and obstacles will affect your mission. All right, so if it's raining, you want to mention that it is raining and to not slip on a log. Or if it's a brushy area, that the enemy will use the brush to hide. Okay, now sometimes it's so obvious, like if you're in a desert, maybe it's not so mandatory, like so important to mention it, or maybe you already mentioned it in the last op order, you don't need to go over it, and sometimes you just don't have obstacles. Okay, so sometimes the terrain and obstacles may not be mentioned. All right. So, situation. So this includes enemy forces, friendly forces, and attachments and detachments. So attachments and detachments is none at OCS, so let's skip over that right now. So situation is to establish what we're dealing with. So what do we have and what does the enemy have? How many are we? How many are they? All right, so we want to have an idea of what we're facing to adapt our execution accordingly. So we make a list for both sides. So for enemy forces, we use the acronym TSWALI, and for friendly forces, we use the acronym HAS. So let's start with the enemy forces. So TSWALI stands for Time, Size, Unit, Activity, Location, and Equipment. So time, when was the enemy spotted? 2 hours ago? At what time? Size, how many enemy personnel were there? Unit, was it a motorized unit, a dismounted patrol? Which organization are they from? Were they Taliban? Activity, what were they doing? Establishing an ambush position? Planting an IED? Location, at which grid location were they located? Or a recognizable feature in the area? Equipment, what were they armed with? How much firepower do they have? Do they have RPGs? Do they have enough ammunition to sustain a 2-hour fight? If so, we need to match or exceed that. Okay, so after you brief the enemy situation using TSWALI, you need to address the enemy's likely course of action upon contact. So for that, we use the acronym DRAW-D. So DRAW-D stands for Defend, Reinforce, Attack, Withdraw, and Delay. So you usually use a maximum of 2. So for example, you can say, upon contact, we expect the enemy to defend and then withdraw. Now let's go to friendly forces. So for friendly forces, we use the acronym HAS, which consists of Higher Unit Mission, Adjacent Unit Mission, and Supporting Unit Mission. So supporting unit mission is none at OCS, so let's just forget about that right now. Now I'm going to explain all of this in layman's terms. All right, so higher unit mission. This is the mission of the level above you. So if you're a fire team, the level above you is a squad. So what's the mission of the squad? And that is the higher unit mission. Now, adjacent unit mission. These are the units beside you. All right, so if you're a fire team, what are the missions of the 2 other fire teams? All right, you work together to complete a common higher mission. This is the higher unit mission. That's the mission of the squad. All right, so let me expand a bit on this. So let's say there are 3 parts to the puzzle big mission. All right, so part A, part B, and part C. So each fire team has 1 part. All right, so I call these parts mini missions. So they all work together to accomplish the big mission. So if your fire team is in charge of mini mission A, well, you can't accomplish big mission alone because you also need someone else to do mini mission B and mini mission C. So remember the acronym HAS from Friendly Forces? Well, the H of HAS, so higher unit mission, is the big mission. Okay? This is the overall mission that everyone is working together to accomplish. Now let's talk about the A in HAS, which is adjacent unit mission. All right, so let's say that your fire team is in charge of mini mission A in blue. Your task is to accomplish mini mission A. Your adjacent units, the two other fire teams, they also have their missions. Those are your adjacent unit mission. It's important for you to know what they need to do so that you understand how they play a role in the big mission, the higher unit mission. Okay, so then you know what to expect. All right, so all three fire teams have their own individual mission that contribute to the mission of the squad, the higher unit mission. All right, so now let's move on to mission. So mission is briefed using the 5 W's. So you brief the 5 W's in the following format: when, who, what, where, why. So when will the mission start? Who, which squad or fire team, so this is the team you are leading. What do they need to do? Where, at which grid location is the objective, and why, in order to do what. So you have to answer all of these questions in your mission brief. So now let's move on to execution. So commander's intent is none at OCS, so let's skip over that. Concept of operations. So this is where you talk about how the mission is going to go down. This is the big picture. All right, so let's refer back to that pie chart I used earlier. So in concept of operation, you talk about the big mission and the mini missions so that everyone understands how each mini mission plays a role in the big mission. All right, laying it all out like that is called the big picture. Okay, so as you brief this big picture, it has to be anonymous, sequential, and thorough so that everyone pays attention. All right, so by anonymous, I mean that you do not assign the mini missions to anyone. Otherwise, they'll just write down their mission and not listen to the rest. All right, so it's just human nature to block out excess information that might confuse or distract us from what we need to focus on. So because you need everyone to know what's going on, you cannot tell them what they will do individually and then talk about the big plan. You got to first tell the big plan and then assign them their individual tasks. So this is to ensure that everyone has the main idea of how every team will contribute to the higher mission. All right, so let's use an example. All right, so let's say that the squad's mission is to rescue a downed Marine pilot. The higher unit mission is to rescue the pilot. So we'll say mini mission A is to extract the pilot from the aircraft. Next, we'll say that mini mission B is to hold security at the crash site. And then mini mission C is to hold back 100 meters from the crash site. So in concept of operation, you are giving the big picture, but you are not saying who is doing what. So all they hear is a fire team will hold back 100 meters from the crash site. Another fire team will hold security at the crash site. And the last fire team will extract the pilot from the aircraft. You don't say fire team 1 will do this, fire team 2 will do that, all right? So you're not identifying which fire team is doing what yet, all right? So this remains anonymous. All right, so it's sequential. So this is walking the dog, so you do not skip around in time, all right? So you explain the plan, the way it will be rolled out. So you start from the beginning of the mission and explain everything in the order that will happen all the way to the end of the mission. Next is thorough, so make sure that you do not leave out important information. You don't want a minor piece of missing information to screw up the whole mission. All right? Now, tasks. So you issue out the 5 W's, so when, who, what, where, why. This is where you finally assign those missions to your subordinates and designate which fire team will be the main effort. All right, so remember those mini missions I talked about earlier? That's what you're issuing out here in tasks. So you actually call those mini missions tasks. So if you're a squad leader, you give a task to each fire team leader. They take that task and make it their mission. So as you're doing the brief in tasks, you are being specific as to who is doing what. You are lifting the veil. In concept of operations, you remained anonymous. Here's where you break that silence and tell everyone exactly who is doing what. This is where you can say, on order, Fire Team 1, you will extract the pilot from the aircraft at the location of the helicopter crash in order to place the pilot on a stretcher and carry him out. You are the main effort. On order, Fire Team 2, you will hold security at the crash site in order to protect Fire Team 1 and the pilot during extraction. On order, Fire Team 3, you will hold back 100 meters from the crash site, 100 meters north of the crash site in order to provide security and support if needed. So now everyone knows their role and also knows what the other fire teams are doing. Notice that I said 100 meters from the crash site and then 100 meters north of the crash site. Well, that's because I have to say what he is doing. So you will hold back 100 meters from the crash site is what you're doing, and then the location is 100 meters north of the crash site. Okay, so it may have sounded repetitive, but it was on purpose. Okay, now let's move on to coordinating instructions. So this is the quote-unquote extra information that is applicable to 2 or more units. All right, so this is kind of where you put the, by the way, FYI type of information. All right, it's important nevertheless. All right, so for instance, at the LRC, the Leadership Reaction Course, the red paint represents unexploded ordnance. So you can simply say red is dead so that everyone knows not to touch the red paint. All right, let's move on to administration and logistics. So that's the 4 B's. So beans, bullets, band-aids, and bad guys. So beans, how much chow and how much water is needed for the mission? Bullets, how much ammo do you need for the mission? Maybe grenades, maybe demolition charges. Band-aids, so self-aid, buddy aid, corpsman aid. And then bad guys, so what will you do with EPWs, enemy prisoners of war? You generally treat them with 5 S's and a T. So that's search, silence, segregate, safeguard, speed to the rear, and tag. All right, so command and signal. So here you decide how you want to communicate. So if the enemy is close or you'll do an assault, you want to use HAVOC. So hand and arm signals, voice on contact. All right. Otherwise, you can just say that you will talk normally if discretion is not needed. Next is the succession of command. So if you're in charge of a squad, you can say if this candidate goes down, the succession of command goes to first fire team leader, then second fire team leader, then third fire team leader. All right. And if you're in charge of a fire team, you can say that the succession of command goes to the ready, so the pointman, then the fire, and then the assist. Okay, guys. So that is a wrap. I hope this was helpful. Good luck.